Welcome to the Powercat Podcast, the original K-State sports show. Here's your host, Tim Fitzgerald.
Welcome to another edition of the Powercat Podcast, sponsored by Fridge Wholesale Liquor. A little bit different setup today because as we record this, I imagine the teams are getting loose at Bramlage Coliseum to play an exhibition game. Kansas State and Fort Hays. Our Ryan Gilbert is there. And the second half of this podcast will be basketball related with him after the game. But this is before the game. Cole Carmody here to talk a little K-State football with me. And of course, this is the Questions Podcast. If you're a subscriber at GoPowerCat.com, and why aren't you? Really think about it. Why aren't you? Then you could ask the questions because that's who gets to do it. Everyone gets to listen or watch the podcast, but you got to be a VIP to ask the questions. And Cole, how were the questions today?
I thought we had some really good questions, both for football and basketball. It's kind of that point of the year where you know what you are when it comes to football, and so the questions can sometimes get a little stale. But I think people are fired up. It's crossover season, Fitz. It's your favorite time of the year.
I call it the overlap. Some people call it the crossover. It's a mess when you're a sports writer. Just when football's like slowly degrading your soul, like it's just got you on the run. And this year's been a lot of travel, bad travel with nighttime games and early flights. You throw in a little basketball, but I let Gilbert take the exhibition. I will be there when the games are for real, which will start next week at Bramlage Coliseum. Cole, let's get after this. Of course, we're sponsored by Fridge Wholesale Liquor. You're going to be in town here for 2 straight weeks. Well, if you come in Tuesday, you can stop at the Fridge and do a little tailgating before the basketball game at Bramlage Coliseum. Weird? I don't think so. I think anytime you get to eat weird food and drink in a parking lot is one you got to take advantage of, and the Fridge will make it easy for you. They can get you the booze. Make sure you stop at the Fridge whenever you're in Manhattan. And in fact, K-State football's got back-to-back home games coming up here in November. Make sure you stop by the Fridge and tell them hi from a Powercat. Ooh, I almost said Powercat Illustrated, Cole. Where'd that come from? A Go Powercat subscriber. Here's your questions from Wild Ash Station. Cole Carmody.
So the first question of this podcast comes from Kat in Colo. Good thing you brought up the home games, Fitz, because the question asks, the upcoming 3-game stretch in football is critical to sweep to ensure the Iowa State game is meaningful. While Cincinnati, Arizona State, and Houston were all picked as bottom feeders preseason, they have quietly become middle-of-the-pack teams. Which game will be the most difficult for K-State? One is a road game, one is a post-bye game, and one is a look-ahead game before Iowa State.
Okay, there was Houston, Arizona State, Cincinnati.
Yes.
I think the best of those teams is Cincinnati, but I think the one that's going to give K-State the most trouble might be Arizona State. Because I am the president of, I can't remember his first name. Which
Cam
is bad.
Scattaboo.
What's his first name?
Cam, I believe.
Cam, yeah. Cam Scattaboo. I can remember the Scattaboo part because that's all everyone says. I'm his biggest fan. Man, he's good. He's just fun to watch. He plays so hard. He plays football the right way. I'd have to go with Cincinnati, though. I really think they're the best team. I don't like the matchup, particularly with Arizona State in that run game, but I think we're going to see Arizona State taper off a little bit here. Cincinnati's still playing. I thought they did a pretty good job out of Colorado. That game kind of came out exactly how I thought it would be. Competitive, but Colorado won. I think Cincinnati's going to have problems with K-State, but let's be honest. Between now and Iowa State, K-State should win every game. They just should. They should take care of business. If this team's good enough to compete for a Big 12 championship, they can win at Houston and 2 at home, heading to Iowa State, and then everything's on the line in Ames, Iowa. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think that if 2 of the games were on the road instead of at home, then it would be a little bit more worrisome. But the fact that you probably, and even if Arizona State or Cincinnati was on the road, it would be more worrisome. But the fact that you play the worst team of those 3 teams on the road, and it's not even a football environment. Like, I don't even know. I went back and watched those highlights against Utah, and like, there's nobody there. They kicked the game-winning field goal, and you can't even see people in the upper deck part of the stadium because there's nobody there. And it was a night game against a team that was picked to be at the top of the conference. I'm like, what are we doing here? And it sucks for Houston because I really, really like Willie Fritz. Like, and I know we've talked about that multiple times. This guy is a freaking football coach. And so honestly, I want to say, even though I just said all that, I think Houston might be the most difficult simply because of Willie Fritz. And if you beat Houston, I just can't see any way that K-State loses after a bye week to an Arizona State or a Cincinnati because they know what's on the line. If they're on the road, sure. But those two games are at home. So I really like K-State. But I think Houston simply because Willie Fritz, he had the game plan to beat K-State when he was at Tulane.
Well, plus let's add in this. You can try to find reasons why K-State wasn't quite as locked in as they needed to be against KU. They got the win, but we can agree that it just wasn't the same thing we've been seeing. Maybe those back-to-back night road games in tough environments and then coming home and playing another night game, maybe K-State's just gassed right now, which would play into that idea that maybe Houston's going to be tougher for K-State. They're going to have to really dig in and find a way to get through this game because they are absolutely exhausted and they are looking forward to that off week, but don't start relaxing until the off week's actually here.
Yep. I 100% agree with you on that. The next question comes from Texas Cat 93, and another really good topic here that I want to dive into, Fitz. He says, are we turning into tight end U?
I think so. In fact, I'm hoping to.
Oh, Siri. Alexa
just piped in. Well, I've got the answer. Don't worry. I got this one. I got it. Yeah, it is. It really is. And Lincoln Cure adds to that.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're a tight end, why wouldn't you want to come here? And more importantly than that, Kansas State's getting the type of tight ends that can make you tight end you. They just sort of had the big guys that can block. Like, honestly, Coach Snyder leaned into that pretty hard at times. They've got a bunch of guys that can block and get downfield and catch, and for the most part are really good receivers. And Lincoln Cure will add to that while being hyper athletic. So yeah, I'm planning on hopefully doing a daily delivery or even a deep purple for that later in the week as I examine how K-State went from not even knowing tight ends were allowed to catch the ball to all of a sudden being tight end you, and what evolved here and how they've used that to open up the offense in the same way that the quarterback run has. The quarterback run succeeds because you don't always expect it. You're kind of worrying about more traditional things. Same with the tight end. You're kind of worried about the receivers, and then the tight end sneaks out on you, and you've got problems. So I'm intrigued. They do a great job using their tight ends, and their tight ends are really athletic, really sound players, smart players. The fact that Will Ancio came into the season as the fourth stringer and now is making touchdown passes and touchdown catches and just shining out there just shows you how good that room is. And maybe a mad shout out to Brian LePack, their coach, who's doing an incredible job. He might be the coach of the year on this staff.
No doubt about it. And I mean, the thing about it too is Fitz, Braden Lofton's hurt. And so they went into the season thinking that, I mean, everybody, us, different media people, fans, all thought, okay, Garrett Oakley is going to take the role of Ben Sinnott. Everybody was on board with Garrett Oakley. And then he didn't play. I mean, he was hurt. I think he was banged up a little bit, but he didn't hardly play. And here comes Braden Lofton, who I think everybody thought about. I was super high on Braden Lofton coming out of high school. I really liked his tape. That's another kid who under the radar signee from Nebraska when they got him. Same thing as Garrett Oakley, under the radar from Nebraska. But they get these two guys in the same class. They work together. They push each other. And then all of a sudden, they both, I think, turn into studs. I think hopefully Braden Lofton's back this week. I know that Chris Kleiman had mentioned it. I didn't see him out on the field on Saturday, but if he doesn't come back this week, surely he'll be back after the bye. And so you really have Garrett Oakley, Will Ancio, Will Swanson, and Braden Lofton. Those are four guys that at any point in time you could run out there in any tight end position, and they can all be not just a legitimate receiving threat, but legitimate blocking threats too. And Fitz, the oldest guy of that group in Will Swanson, you know what? He's just steady Eddie, but he's probably the fourth best receiver out of that bunch.
Yep, he really is. He's reliable as hell.
He is.
So he plays a lot. Here's another interesting thing. If you go back to Ben Sinnott being around last year, Iowa, Nebraska, and Kansas, that's where the tight ends are coming from.
All of them.
Every single one.
All of them.
Right now, the roster is Nebraska and Kansas tight ends. Next year, they'll add another Kansas kid. They lost an Iowa kid who's now in the NFL. It's absolutely incredible. Feed them a little corn, let them grow up big and strong, and make them chase chickens. I don't know what's the farm cliche for that. Poor Will Ancio's from Wichita.
Yeah.
But whatever they're doing, keep doing that and do it more, and try to do that for other positions. Unlock the key to success at some other positions, like you have tight end, and heaven knows where this football program will go. I got to tell you this, though, if I'm a Midwest tight end prospect and got some speed and got some size, I want to go to Kansas State. I'm going to have the ball in my hands.
And on top of that, Fitz, before we move on, Lincoln Cure was just named the #1 tight end in the country by 247 as we record this on Monday. So Lincoln Cure officially the #1 tight end prospect in the country with a 98 overall grade, according to 24/7, the number 32 player in the country, #1 tight end in the state. So Lincoln Cure moving up the charts. Another one of those guys, Fitz, you brought it up. I'm just going to say it. I know we don't dig into recruiting, but Ian Premier from Great Bend, he's the #1 player in the state right now in the class of 2026. He's from Great Bend. He's 6'5", 225 pounds, and he's the number 64 player in the country.
What are we doing in Kansas right now? What is this tight end stuff?
It's crazy. He was at the game on Saturday too, so surely left a little bit of an impression.
Well, here's what's interesting is, the state of Kansas really likes crossover athletes. They encourage that. You're a coach now, you know that. They limit the time you can work with football so that you do basketball, track, wrestling, whatever else. I'm now seeing kids that we would typically think of basketball stars in the state of Kansas in that 6'4" to 6'6" range. They play the post, they dominate, they're athletic, good. They probably win state championships in basketball. Not saying these kids don't play basketball, but that's not the focus of their athleticism. They're now turning it to playing tight end. And I wonder, Cole, if there is an Jason Kelsey effect in the Midwest right now with how impactful he's been for professional football in Kansas City and his emergence as one of the greatest tight ends of all time. But also kids are looking at him and saying, look at his life. Yeah. Look what he's done. And he's built just like me.
Yeah.
So that's really real. That's because let's be blunt here. If you're a 6'6" kid in basketball, you better be hyper athletic. You better be able to jump out the gym, and you better be able to play guard.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly right.
But when you're that size, you can play tight end. That can be your spot. And I'm glad to see kids doing it. It's a fun position. You get to play physical at the line of scrimmage. You get to go downfield and catch passes. And the way K-State lines them up as fullbacks on occasion, splits them out wide. That's really a cool position to play.
Everybody looks at Travis Kelce in this area. I mean, everybody does. Just like all the quarterbacks are influenced by Patrick Mahomes. Right. You go to a high school game, you'll see a quarterback running around scrambling. Well, 10 years ago, if a kid did that, he was getting yelled at. Now it's just part of the game. And I think the same can be said for the tight end groups. It's funny you bring up basketball because I know we mentioned Gilbert. He'll be on in the second half. He asked Will Ancio a question that he tweeted out about the starting five if his team for basketball, if the offense had a basketball team. And of course, Will Ancio included himself, and Garrett Harstad, another tight end, was another walk-on tight end was in.
But who's the post? That one surprised me a little bit.
It'd be Easton Kilty from.
I didn't see that one. He must have a little hoop game in him.
Little athleticism for the big guy.
Yeah.
Next question comes from Claws Out, Balls Out. Is this team building at the right time? We should be building to 2025, while many other teams should be rebuilding in 2025.
It's exactly right. Claws out, balls out, both of them. You nailed it. You really did. I mean, this team's main window is 25. I mean, think about the players that'll be back. Some players will be gone, but so many of these younger players will be back and even better than what they are, including that entire backfield and some of the main receivers. But they're enjoying some success this season. And if they can make it to the Big 12 championship this season, I don't know, win the thing. What's that say about 25? Where would they be in the preseason polls? I know they're in the Big 12 and people have kind of checked out on the Big 12 because they've decided it's bad when it's really not bad, but that's okay. I do agree. And I received some really interesting information today about how a lot of the quarterbacks who are coming out early are failing in the NFL. They don't have enough foundation under them, and it's the guys that have gone through 4 years and seen a lot of things at college that are having this success in the NFL. I thought that was really interesting. You think about it, it makes some sense. You're eliminating a year in which you would play full time. You'd play 12 games, 14 games, whatever it would be, to go to the NFL where you're not going to play. And, even very rarely does a true rookie quarterback start.
Yep.
We're seeing it at a few places, but they also look like rookies. So, there's arguments being made that the NFL might quickly be saying, no, quarterbacks, you need to stay in school, because all the ones we're taking early that come out early, they're flopping. And that's not good.
I think the exception to that rule might be Caleb Williams. That might be the only one who's had any kind of success who's come out early. I mean, Drake May started on the bench for the Patriots, but he's in a horrible situation. I don't know how good of a situation Chicago is for Williams, but look at Jaden Daniels. I mean, this is a guy who was in college for 5 or 6 years, and he comes in and he could be an NFL MVP, not just rookie of the year. So I think there is something to getting game reps. I don't think it has anything to do with confidence, Fitz. I think you're right. It has something to do with game reps. But Avery, I mean, there's no reason why he can't come back for that 4th year, especially because it's less about how many years you've played. It's less about what year you are when you come out versus how many years you've played in college. Avery didn't start as a freshman. And so how comfortable would an NFL team be looking at with a 2-year starter essentially in college? I don't care how good you are. There might be some red flags there.
Yeah. There would be. And plus, on top of that, there'll be questions about his size. He doesn't have traditional NFL quarterback size, which, tradition, there's always guys that break that tradition. And I think Avery's capable of playing in the NFL, but you're right. He just needs lots of reps. We saw him struggle a little bit at the start of the year when he had that weight on his shoulders, and now he's acclimated to it. And I can imagine the adjustment to the NFL would be even more resounding. Keep in mind, didn't he just turn 20 the other day?
No, it was 19, I believe.
He just turned 19?
He is a young sophomore. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I don't know for sure. We'd have to double check on that.
Yeah. Again, research. Why?
I know.
So,
who cares?
Yeah. I'll look that up, but yeah, he's a young kid. So, I think there's a sales pitch to be made for him to stay his full 4 years of college.
Getting back to this question, talking about 2025, I pulled up the schedule, the home and the road opponents, and K-State goes to Utah. I mean, that at the time of the release, you're thinking, oh, they got to go to Utah. That's going to be a really tough game. But again, that program's kind of in flux right now. I don't think that team is going to be picked very high in the conference standings. The same thing can be said about Oklahoma State. K-State has to go to Stillwater, and then they have to go to Arizona, and they have to go to Baylor. And those are the road games that this team plays in 2025. And all 4 of those programs, I don't think it's unrealistic. Maybe not Oklahoma State. I don't think they're going to have a coaching change. But all 4 of those other programs, it's not out of the realm of possibility. All 3 of those other programs could have coaching changes. I don't think it's going to happen at Baylor now, but
that's interesting. Yeah.
It's an interesting dynamic with this team going on the road.
And they go to Kansas also. So
Kansas, yes.
And look, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but people come after Lance Leipold every year. And I don't think the record this year will change that.
Nope.
I think there'll be some legitimate offers there. And that now becomes a little more interesting. Gundy, probably going to retire. Utah, probably another retirement. But yeah, I think Baylor's going to be safe, and Arizona probably be safe, but still, I can't get past the fact he was out hanging out with donors an hour before kickoff. I still can't get my mind wrapped around that. I wouldn't do that covering the game. I'm just baffled by that, but he did it.
And on top of that, obviously, Farmageddon being in Ireland. I mean, I don't know if that necessarily counts as a road game, since Iowa State has to go on the road too. But I mean, if again, we're talking 2025 here, and I know K-State's in the middle of a Big 12 championship run, but how big is that game going to be? Because those are going to be the 2 teams that are picked to win the conference. Like, unless K-State has an epic collapse, those two teams will be at the top of the Big 12 standings next year. I firmly believe that. Maybe Colorado, probably not if Sanders and Hunter are gone. But, I mean, those two teams playing right off the bat could be really big for both programs because really, Fitz, the only thing that matters is if you lose that game, okay, you lost that game and it matters for the conference, like tiebreaker rules. But the rest of the season is completely still in front of you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. You could start and end a season playing each other with, in a regular season at a championship game. Interesting. I as an aside, I noticed that Oregon State and Washington State are playing each other twice next season.
Yep.
And the dates of those games are weird. I mean, it wouldn't be easy to just change one of those, but I mean, whoever's playing at home, Kansas State could go there. Whoever's playing on the road could go to Arizona. I don't know. I don't like the non-conference games. They just kind of bother me. I know it was essential, but there is some way to get around that here in next year, but I don't think the pieces will fit together necessarily.
I think Arizona dislikes it more than K-State at this point.
I bet.
Next question comes from Powercat Ryan. He says, with only 8 games played so far, Kansas State is 7-1, ranked in the AP top 20, has 2 wins over AP top 25 teams, plus a Colorado team that is now ranked and controls their destiny the rest of the way. What does this team need to do to be considered one of the K-State's 10 best teams of all time?
Well, if they play for a Big 12 title, I think you're certainly in there. If you win a Big 12 title, you're certainly in the top 5. And yeah, I think that's all tangible. But I think that to be remembered that way, you probably need to get to the Big 12 championship game. But 10-2 into the regular season be pretty impressive still. You'll end up playing in a decent bowl game. You won't make the playoff at 10-2, but the problem for Kansas State is some voters have decided that no one's good in the Big 12, except they do have some, usually BYU and Iowa State are showing up there. But when K-State beats them, it kind of makes them not good. Mm-hmm. So it's frustrating. I don't know how much K-State can really climb, how much other teams can really climb to get into the top rankings to maybe be an at-large bid. But I'm already seeing some voters downgrade the Big 12 for obvious reasons.
Fitz, what team has K-State beaten that's bad? Like that you would consider this is a bad football team?
I've been following UT Martin, but that would certainly fit. Tulane's good.
Yeah.
I think you can make an argument that Oklahoma State is bad.
That's true. So
bad.
What? I don't know if Arizona could be in that category yet.
They're playing like it.
They might miss out on a bowl game, but other than that, like I'm not ready. West Virginia turned around, surprised some people against Arizona last week. I don't know if they're a bad football team. Like,
no, they're not.
I don't see any bad teams on the schedule for K-State the rest of the way. Houston's bad, but we talked about this on the Insiders. Go look at the ACC. There are some really bad football teams, and if it's going to be disappointing for K-State fans if K-State finds a way to win these next 3 games against Houston, ASU, and Cincinnati, and then they lose to Iowa State in Ames. That's going to be really disappointing for K-State fans and the coaches and the players. But 10-2 in a season in which I think that was probably the expectation, or maybe not the expectation, but at the beginning of the season, if a genie would have came to the average fan and said, K-State will go 10-2, will you take that? I feel like that'd be a resounding yes.
You're right. I mean, I think it was optimistic to say 10-2, and they might end up with that, and it won't be good enough to get in the title game.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm encouraged by what I'm seeing. I think this program is building towards something bigger and better, and it's not just because of the quarterback. You're seeing recruiting take some steps that really hasn't ever taken place, in not just getting a big player like Lincoln Cure, significant, landing the top tight end and top anything at Kansas State is huge, but just the class has more depth, and we're seeing it particularly with that class that's on the field now with Avery Johnson and Austin Romaine and Jace Brown. And even though Dylan Edwards came in through the portal, he's still in that class. that's just going to be a class that offers a lot of gifts through their 4 or 5 years at K-State. Jack Fabris too. I think Fabris is. I wish he was on the field more, to be honest.
Well, and it's crazy, Fitz, because you look at what they're doing in recruiting right now, and I mean, this class that's going to be freshmen next year, they're top 35 in the country. They just had a commitment that will probably boost there and make that potentially a top 30 class in the country, top 3 in the Big 12, the only Big 12 with a 5-star commit. And so, like, you have to be extremely excited if you're a K-State fan. On top of what we already talked about with the whole Avery Johnson effect, like if you can get him to stay for that senior season, there's no reason that this team, I'm not going to sit here and say we'll make the playoffs twice in the next 3 years. But if this team doesn't find a way to win the Big 12 or make the college football playoff in the next 3 years, I don't want to say it would be disappointing, but I almost kind of feel like it might be a little disappointing.
Yeah, it would be. This is an opportunity for Kansas State. As I've said this before, as all Big 12 teams have. I think if you show up and, you make 2 out of the next 3, certainly 3 out of the next 4 playoffs, which means you're winning championships for the most part. I mean, I think we all imagine the Big 12 would be considered for at-large bids. If the AP voters had their way, that'd be a no, but we haven't heard from the committee either.
Yeah.
And the committee's data might be totally different. So, I mean, that just, if you're in the playoff 2 out of 3 years, that redefines you. And that's what I love about the playoff for these conferences. You have an opportunity to win a game, and you're going to be in the Final Four immediately. You might get the 5th best team, might be a really good program from the SEC. And if you beat them, what's it say? That flips the narrative on its head. So, this is a huge opportunity for the Big 12 and for Kansas State.
No doubt about it. You want to do one more, Coach?
Let's do it.
I just called you Coach. How about that? Right. Boss.
Let's do it.
We go. All right. Last question comes from Texas Cat 93. He asked, speaking of coach, is head coach Chris Klieman's health a concern for the program moving forward?
No. From people I'm talking to, they're not really. It's nothing serious. It's just blood sugar, rehydration, those type of things. Not getting enough food intake on game days, water intake on game days. Maybe the night games are playing into that. I don't know, but they feel like it's manageable and can be managed. And I think that indicates why Coach Klieman said after the game, my wife's going to kill me, because she's probably harping on him to make sure you drink your water, have a snack during the day. But man, you get those game day nerves and you don't get real hungry. I think it is a concern. I am told this, though. The reason he went to the locker room was they had him hydrating so much he had to pee. So it wasn't anything serious. He had to pee because they're rehydrating him. And believe me, of everyone in the media, I'm the one who can relate to that as someone who has that more frequently than former. But I'm not worried about him overall, as long as he takes steps to take care of it. But I think a day game on Saturday in Houston, which might be raining, so you could just get a drink, right there, just tip his head back, get that drink, and then having the off week, I think, help him reset. But have a damn salad, Chris. Come on, what are you doing, man? What if you had what if we put in like a corn dog machine, and he could just, who can resist a corn dog? There's food on a stick. Yeah,
let's be honest. If they put a corn dog machine in Veneer, Taylor Bratt would eat all of the corn dogs before anybody else could get them.
That's probably the truth. And that is a thought we'll end the first half of this podcast on. That was a deep thought right there, that Taylor Bratt might be the corn dog thief. I don't even know what that means. We'll be back on the other side in a few hours with Ryan Gilbert, who's getting ready to cover that Kansas State exhibition basketball game. And it'll seem like this happened seamlessly, like we were together the entire time, but we're not. You see how that works? Now I'm going to break. It's complicated.
We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors.
Please visit the Fridge Wholesale Liquor, located at the corner of Claflin and Westport Road, in Manhattan, Kansas.
Welcome back to the show. Let's return to the Cats and Dogs studio.
Welcome back to the Powercat Podcast, sponsored by Fridge Wholesale Liquor. As I mentioned at the top of the show, we're doing things a little bit differently. We just covered football with Cole Carmody, and now we move on to men's basketball with Ryan Gilbert, who was at Tuesday night's exhibition win over Fort Hays State for the Cats. We're going to get his thoughts on that game and where the Cats stand heading into the season, which opens next Tuesday night at Bramlage. But before you go there, stop by the Fridge Wholesale Liquor and check out their great selection, incredible prices, and incredible service, just wonderful service. Fridge Wholesale Liquor, we appreciate their longtime support of K-State Athletics and the Powercat Podcast. And now we move on to Ryan Gilbert. Many hours later after taping Cole, Gills is losing his voice. I think I'm losing my voice now. We shall effort forward and do this a little bit differently than usual. I am actually reading the questions. That's how much I cherish Ryan Gilbert's input on these topics.
Just don't be like me when you read them and you'll be A-okay.
Okay. So I shouldn't be skinny with lots of hair. Okay. Call me T22. Who impressed you against Fort Hays? And who should we maybe pump the brakes on just a little bit?
Well, I mean, I guess I'll go with pumping the brakes first. I don't know if there's really anybody that was bad or poor in this game. Moby Ike-Garuka didn't play, but Jerome Tang said afterwards that he had to go back home, which is overseas for him because his dad is dealing with a health issue. And then Taj Manning didn't play either. And so, maybe I wouldn't say pump the brakes on those guys, but we genuinely just haven't seen anything on the court from them this year. So too early to say either way, but I would say as far as most impressive fits, Buddy Rich was awesome. I mean, he was athletic. We all know that he's a freak of nature, and he was maybe a little bit raw last year, had to clean up some things, but against Fort Hays State, I know it's just Fort Hays State, so I think I should say that everything, I think after this question, we'll kind of talk general, but everything with this game, you can maybe take with a grain of salt, but Buddy Rich was great. He was a bully down low, operated near the rim. Coleman Hawkins, you know what? That might be my answer for pump the brakes on, because Coleman Hawkins was great against Fort Hays State. But I think just generally speaking, not just with what we saw on Tuesday, but I don't want people to think that Coleman Hawkins is going to be the next Michael Beasley. He can certainly score at all three levels. Without a doubt, he can do that. But I mean, you had guys at Big 12 Media Day calling him the quarterback of the offense, and he's 6'9" or 6'10", whatever. And so he's going to do so much more than just score. Is he capable of, giving you 20 a night? Absolutely, he can do that. But Hawkins is such more of a complete player, and we saw that on Tuesday. And so I would say Buddy Rich was probably the biggest surprise in my eyes. But Hawkins was great. Brendan Housen, boy, he has the green light to take as many threes as he wants. And so maybe that would, last one, maybe pump the brakes on. Don't pump the brakes on Housen's shooting abilities, but just maybe him being more of a 3-level score, something like that. It seems kind of clear just with this one game that Housen is maybe just a 3-point sniper like we thought.
That's okay. I like that.
Yeah.
K-State's needed that. Let's move on to Cardio Cat 78. Coach Tang seems quietly optimistic about this season in interviews so far. What message do you think he's holding on to about this new team?
Well, you go back to last year, and they were outspoken about Tyler Perry being the best shooter in the country and getting to the tournament and all these things in hopes that they had lined out. And that's kind of, there's nothing wrong with that, but I'm sure it was maybe a little humbling, right, for this staff to not make it, to come up short. And so I'm sure Tang is maybe watching what he says just a little bit closer. And in his first year, as a head coach, you're learning some stuff on the fly. I know he learned some awesome traits and characteristics from Scott Drew, but he's still a third-year head coach. He's not necessarily used to this. And so I think he's maybe being a little cautious with his words based off of what happened last year. But Tang does believe that this is a much deeper roster. And if you have something happen to Quez Glover and Naquan Tomlin gets kicked off the team like we saw last year, K-State, Jerome Tang told me at Big 12 Media Day that they weren't necessarily equipped to kind of battle that. You know, the depth wasn't as good as maybe they wanted it to be last year. This year, they feel like they've got a much deeper roster. Max Jones was out tonight. That opened the door for Buddy Rich to go in and play like he did. And so it's a deep roster. And so I think that Tang's just maybe being smart with his words. And I doubt he pays attention to KU burners out there, but it's material for people that want to get on you. And so, quietly optimistic. I guess that might be fair, maybe not, but they're taking it one step at a time. They understand that it is a long, long season. It's a journey. You want to peak in March. You don't want to peak here on October 30th, October 29th, whatever.
Yep, that would be troubling if your best game was your exhibition game. Let's not have that. From Itambibi, who will be the scoring leader on this team and who will score 20-plus points in a game first?
It's a really good question. And I just said to not get your hopes up with Coleman Hawkins being a guy to give you 20 every night. But I think Coleman, this is just such a deep and versatile roster that I don't want to give a cop-out answer. I really don't. But anybody can step up and score, right? Brendan Housen was the leading scorer on Tuesday, and that was pretty much entirely, I think, from the 3-point line. And so, CJ Jones was maybe more of a facilitator than a scorer on Tuesday, but he's a guy that has been the biggest surprise. Maybe Max Jones, we don't know what to see out of him yet. He's a crazy athlete. Reminds me of a guy like, maybe Justin Edwards that's a nice wing player with some nice bounce that, like CJ Jones, Max Jones has been a crazy surprise. And so, Doug McDaniel, maybe if he can get some things straightened out, get into that starting lineup, thinking McDaniel, could he be the leading scorer? Sure. There's just so many guys. Gasson obviously has experience in this program. You go up and down the list. Achor can score anywhere on the court. After the game, we got done with the press conference with Tang, and Achor is right out there immediately getting shots up after the win. And so they've got so many guys that can step up. If I had to give one answer, Fitz, it would be Coleman Hawkins, just because he just seems kind of like that guy, right? All the hype around him, the alleged NIL money that went to him, right? He seems like he's the dude, but most importantly, really fits for Hawkins was your friend Brad Underwood, right? He's been a part of a winning program, 4 years under his belt, and he's made the NCAA tournament time and again. And so I would say Coleman Hawkins, but that is not at all a slight at anybody else on this roster.
No. Well, were you surprised Doug McDaniel didn't start?
Yeah, I think Tang just said it was coach's decision, and it sounds like it was something off the court, not something we'll dive into here on the pod. But, if I'd known nothing was going on, I'd be very surprised. But when you put it in context, I think that McDaniel, he talked about, I've mentioned this in my player preview with Buddy Rich, right? He, last year, maybe didn't see the court as much as he would have liked to, or as the coaches would have liked to, because of some off the court stuff in the classroom. And so, Doug McDaniel, I think the future is certainly bright for him. He was the first guy the staff wanted to get out of the portal. I'm not really concerned with him not starting. I expect him to be a starter. Fitz, that being said, Tang was asked in the postgame presser about CJ Jones coming in and starting in place of Doug not starting, right? And Tang shot that down and said, no, CJ Jones is a starter. He earned the start. By all means, he's been a great surprise for this team, this program. And so CJ Jones and Buddy Rich, man, I don't know what they're doing out in East St. Louis, but they've obviously go back very far. Shout out to Darius Austin, their assistant coach at East St. Louis. He does obviously a great job sort of developing them, and they've been, them two and Max Jones. They've been just surprises. And so, of course, the top, guys on the roster are going to go out and make plays, certainly without a doubt, Fitz. But you go down the depth on this team, like I mentioned earlier. I think that's why this coaching staff feels like they can make some noise this year. It's the depth. They can handle some adversity.
Is there any truth that Doug McDaniel got caught liking my tweets and they suspended him?
What was your tweet about?
Truth that?
What was your tweet about?
Not, I'm just all my tweets.
Anything
maybe he liked all my tweets and they, never mind.
Doug wanted my press pass pulled because I was just associated with you. So it would make sense.
See, you got to be careful out there. Don't let them know you know me. Claws out, balls out takes us to a place I think you just visited what is supposed to be the strength of this year's basketball team. And it's got to be that depth, isn't it?
Depth, athleticism, versatility. You've got so many guys that can do so many things. Chor, Coleman Hawkins, Max Jones, CJ Jones in their own different ways, whether that's scoring, defense, facilitating, so much versatility on this roster. But Fitz, I think the best way to answer this is going back to last year and the problems that this team had. It was turnovers and it was poor 3-point shooting. Now, that's not to say they had poor 3-point shooters, right? I think they had some nice guys that could shoot last year. But at the end of the day, in the games, for whatever reason, they were getting open looks. They just weren't knocking them down. But the strengths of this team can be to knock down shots from deep. I think Arthur Kaluma, correct me if I'm wrong, was the leading 3-point scorer last year. And they've got like 5 guys on this team that if they played with K-State based off of last season's numbers, they would have been the best 3-point shooter. And so Tang reloaded in that regard. And then as for turnovers, only 5 in the first half. It was not the prettiest game, but that's an exhibition. And so that's kind of what you expect. But taking care of the basketball, obviously connecting on your shots deep when you have them, when you're open. But then, I'll say it again here with the depth. I think once you get not only late into a game when there's 5 minutes left, but, 13, 14 games into the Big 12 grind, there's a lot of travel. There's no buys. You got 20 games. This is where K-State can, I'm not saying they're going to struggle early on and make a late season push, but you're going to have more in your arsenal with so many guys on your bench that are going to have fresh legs. And so the strength really is obviously the depth, the versatility as a whole. But then when you get into kind of the statistics, I think the turnovers for this bunch are going to be down. Doug McDaniel, I think he's very excited, embracing that role to be more of a point guard, a facilitator. Whereas at Michigan, on a team that won 8 games, he was kind of just asked to score because there wasn't much around him. CJ Jones, awesome facilitator. His numbers at UIC last year, don't have them in front of me. He's the type of guy that you want to bring into your program when it comes to assist to turnover ratio. And so they've got there was some sloppiness against Fort Hays State, but like I said, it was an exhibition game. You don't want to put that much stock into something like that. So it's exciting, Fitz. My throat. I know we're talking about getting through this show, but my throat. I've been able to power through this, but it's basketball season. A little under the weather, but I'm really genuinely happy, and that's not a disrespect to football. It's been a lot of fun being full time with you, boss, but I'm absolutely stoked for basketball, and it's finally here.
He does love his basketball. It's Ryan Gilbert, who helps us out at Go Powercat. He is my managing editor. Someone's got to manage me, and he does a good job. He and I will be heading to Houston for football, and the Cats open the season on the basketball court Tuesday night at Bramlage. Gills, where's this team going to finish in the Big 12? Just a quick answer. What spot?
I would say 6th or 7th. And I know that there's that kind of tier 1 that I've said on record many times. KU, Iowa State, Houston, Baylor, and Arizona. It's going to be very tough to catch them. So I would say 6th place is probably that tier 2, where maybe K-State can be at the top of that tier. Well,
we will see. A lot of basketball to be played, and we will be all over it at Go Powercat. He's Ryan Gilbert, and I'm Fitz. As I scroll down here to get to the end of the show, we appreciate everyone watching. Thank you to Cole Carmody for his in-depth look at K-State football, little basketball here, and we are done with this week's Powercat Podcast. We will talk to you. Well, we got the pregame show and the Friday walkthrough coming up before the game. And then, of course, Cole will be hosting the postgame podcast when K-State plays Houston down in Houston on Saturday.
This has been a GoPowerCat.com and Spirit Street production. Please support this show by subscribing to this YouTube channel or follow us on your favorite podcast platform.